We thought he'd go big. We thought he'd make a splash, but instead, he turned inside and hired someone from his own staff to coach the offensive line. Is it a risk or is it the right hire? We'll talk about it.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. I'm your host, Kevin Borba. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. We're also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcast. So thank you for making me your first listen of the day. Like I said, free and available wherever you get your podcast. And who doesn't love free things? Let's talk about it. The Colorado Buffaloes lost two staffers after their Alamo Bowl loss to BYU. Now, one of those was Vincent Dancy, the defensive ends coach, and the other was Phil Loadholt, the offensive line coach. They both went to Mississippi State, and I would say the bigger loss of the two was Phil Loadholt, simply because we had yet to see what that offensive line could be. Another year with him coaching, does that unit really step it up? We don't know because, quite frankly, Colorado's offensive line for the past 2 years has been one of the worst, if not the worst, in college football, right? They ranked 124th this past season in sacks allowed. And the year prior, I think only Old Dominion, so I think they were 129th or 130th in sacks allowed. Only Old Dominion had more in 2023. So this Colorado offensive line has been basically olaying defensive lines for the past 2 years. And so we needed someone, or Coach Prime needed to make a hire that could develop, could turn things around, and he went with Gunnar White. And so if you don't know who Gunnar White is, I think you're probably in the majority. And there's no shade to Gunnar White there. He's just a younger coach who's already on staff as an analyst. This is sort of his background. He was a graduate of Jackson State, served as the offensive line coach last season for the linemen, or this was at the time during his time at Jackson State. Served as an offensive line coach for the linemen, which was a team in the spring league. Before that, he was an interim tight ends coach for Nevada in 2021. He was also a GA at Nevada. He was a student assistant at Jackson State in 2014, 2015, and he played college football at Hines Community College and Texas Tech, and then also coached at Belhaven University. So he doesn't really have much experience as the guy, right? I think he was an analyst for Colorado. I think he's been around programs. Don't think he's ever run a position group. And so really interesting that Coach Prime tabbed him as the offensive line coach, because I think all of us assumed he'd dip back into that NFL pool of guys who played in the NFL, coached in the NFL, or had some ties to the NFL. And that's not what he did. And so maybe he just felt that this was the right move. And it's also worth noting that George Hegeman will be around the program and helping out, because I think there was a little bit of when this news kind of broke, which it broke on Neely's YouTube page, because they were doing like introduction videos, and he was like, "Hi, I'm Gunnar White. I'm the offensive line coach," and everyone was like, "What? Who?" And so, yeah, I think there's sort of this like notion that, I don't know, that Coach Prime sort of took a risk and maybe didn't do his due diligence, I guess. I don't know. But Hegeman is still around and is going to be a co-offensive line coach, according to what I've been told, based on what I've been told. So it's kind of going to be a committee of coaches. And so I think that's interesting. I think this is now the second time that Coach Prime has really opted to go the committee route. He's going to do it with whoever is the running backs coach. It's supposed to be Marshall Faulk, and we haven't heard about that in quite a while. So I don't know if that's going to come to fruition. So I don't really know what Coach Prime's thought process is here. Maybe, obviously, and I think this is the hard part when you hire coaches from within, right, is only those who are in the building know what they truly bring to the table, right? I don't know what Gunnar White's specialty is. I am not in the rooms where it happens with them. I don't know what Gunnar White, what kind of guy he's like, right? Maybe in the rooms where it happened, he's showing great understanding of schemes. He's showing great understanding of how to teach technique. He's showing great understanding of like, hey, we struggle with this, so this is how we improve that. I don't know. So it's a very interesting hire. I don't know if it'll pay off, but at the same time, I guess if you're Coach Prime, you go, could it get any worse, right? Worst offensive line in college football the past 2 years, pretty much. Could it get any worse than that? I guess we'll find out. I guess you take a risk like this when you have a quarterback like Caden Salter who could run and maybe mask some of the flaws in the offensive line. But that being said, Gunnar White has a big task ahead of him, right? You return Jordan Seaton, and you lose Khalil Benson, you lose Hank Zelinkus, excuse me, and you sort of had a unit last year that was just a ragtag group of guys that I don't know if they were ready or I didn't really love the group. Excuse me, Tyler Brown, uh, Harden, whoever else played. It just wasn't it. But you look at what he's going to be dealing with or working with come 2025 is he has a brand new unit. So Colorado's probably going to have one starting returning lineman. And then they bring in Chauncey Gooden from Lipscomb Academy. He's a four-star interior offense lineman, 6'4", 320. Heard some positive things about him. Carter Smith, 6'5", 293. Offensive tackle. He looks severely undersized to me. It wouldn't shock me if he doesn't play, at least not at first. And then they also brought in offensive tackle Jay Gardenhire from New Jersey, from Michigan. Got some size to him, but is he ready? We don't know. And then in the portal, they got Mana Taimini from Ole Miss, 6'4", 345. Zy Chrysler from Illinois, which I think he has a good chance of playing. Zarian McGill, I think, will be a starting guard or center from Louisiana Tech, had over 30 career starts, got an all-conference nod, I believe it was. Then you get a guy like Ogun. I'm just going to call him Aki because I don't know how to pronounce his last name correctly. I don't want to do him a disservice, but he's a former four-star recruit, played at Texas A&M, got some snaps there. So he's going to have pretty much a brand new unit outside of Jordan Seaton, maybe a couple guys hold over, maybe you get a Cash Cleveland in there at center. You can move the Louisiana Tech transfer to guard, but yeah, Gunnar White, new offensive line coach at Colorado. I think this is an interesting hire. I'm not going to give any like concrete, like this is going to work or it's not going to work until I actually see results, because at the end of the day, like I said, we don't know much about what Gunnar White's going to bring to the table because we haven't seen him do anything, at least not at this level, but he's familiar with Coach Prime. He's been with the program, spent some time at Jackson State. So clearly he probably understands what Coach Prime's looking for. He probably understands what was wrong. I mean, he's got a front row seat to see what's wrong. So clearly Coach Prime sees something in the young man, and hopefully he could turn things around in Boulder because they need a run game and they need to protect the quarterback a lot better. When we come back, FanDuel released their projected win total odds for Colorado, and I think it's very disrespectful. This episode of Locked on Buffs is brought to you by Game Time. And let me tell you about Game Time because they're the premier place to get your tickets. Looking for tickets to your next big event, whether it's comedy, concerts, or a sporting event, finding the right ticket at the right price can be a headache, but with Game Time Picks, it's never been easier. Let me tell you how it works. With Game Time Picks, the app does all the work for you. It curates the best deals so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. I've been using Game Time Picks for a while now, and here's why I love it. The curated deals make it super simple to find great tickets at a great price. No more sifting through thousands of options. I recently grabbed a super deal for a prime seat to see Matt Rife. He's going to Fresno. Me and my fiance are going to go. We both see his videos on Instagram all the time. We got a great deal. It felt like 2 tickets were like the price of one on Game Time. So I personally loved working with Game Time. And the best part, you're covered with the Game Time's lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal somewhere else, they'll refund 110% of the difference. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something comes up. Ready to make your next event better? Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to Locked on Buffs. I appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, so make sure to like, subscribe, follow, so that way you don't miss out on a moment of the coverage. FanDuel, they released a handful of win totals for next season. So over-unders, and Colorado was among the teams that they featured. And let's just say they're clearly expecting a bit of regression from the Buffs. And it's one of those things where you have to take everything with a grain of salt because not everybody is going to believe in not everyone's going to believe in Coach Prime's visions. Not everyone's going to believe in what they just saw last year, right? Colorado goes 9-4. They really turned everything around, and this was my response to their win total because let me show you guys the win total first, and then we could dive into it, and I could explain why I hate it so much, or I want to say hate it, but I just don't disagree. So if you're viewing, you could see there the Colorado Buffaloes come in at 6.5, 6.5 wins, which means you're basically betting, are they going to make it to a bowl game or no? Because obviously they have to, well, I mean, I guess they could get 6 wins and still, but basically you're betting, can they get to 7 wins or not? Are they going to go 7-5 or are they going to go 5-7? So that's the odds for Colorado. Here's where I think, because me personally, if I was a gambling man, I'd smash that over because I think there's a lot of things that work in Colorado's favor. One, even though they lose Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter, who were 2 of college football's biggest megastars, I think it forces Coach Prime, his staff, to plan around other players to be a more complete team, right? I think they had a lot of really good players, LeJonte Wester, Jimmy Horn, Will Shepard, Cameron Smith-Craig, Shiloh Sanders, all these guys, right? BJ Green. But I think now on offense specifically, it forces you to have a more advanced and thorough scheme. B, sorry, I had to sneeze there. It forces you to think outside your comfort zone, right? I think sometimes, even if that's not what the play was designed to do, I think sometimes when in doubt, it was like, okay, Shedeur, find Travis and we'll figure it out from there. And I don't think they want to do that every year. So realistically, Caden Salter or Julian Lewis, whoever starts at quarterback, is going to have an offense hopefully catered to them, right? If it's Caden Salter, you need the quarterback run as a part of it. If it's Julian Lewis, you need to find him those quick and easy passes to get him comfortable before you start throwing him into the fire. And you need a run game, right? I think last year and the year before, Colorado kind of got away with not leaning on the run game because they had Shedeur, because they had Travis, and now they don't have that. But they do have a talented stable of running backs with Michael Welch, Isaiah Gustav, Dallin Hayden. They do have some talented receivers in Joseph Williams, Cam Michael, Omarion Miller, Draylon Miller. So they got talent there, right? And they have a tight end in Zach Atkins. He came on the show a while back, and he's expecting to be a weapon in the offense. So they have more talent elsewhere, I would say. Or at least I would say wide receiver is the only place where I'm like, but they have talent everywhere else. So if you are Colorado, you need to figure out a way to maximize your offense. Defensively, although you lose Travis Hunter, right, you bring in Vickers from Oklahoma State, 4-star blue chip kind of guy, and you also have Preston Hodge, DJ McKinney coming back. So you return 2 of I think Colorado honestly had the best trio of corners in the Big 12 and maybe one of the best trio of corners in college football, and you return 2/3 of it. So not too shabby. You had guys like Savion Riley who played some pretty big snaps at safety. Carter Stottmeyer was another guy who played some pretty big snaps at safety. So you have guys, right? I don't think Colorado needs to worry about losing these, or I don't think they need to worry about all of these departures that they've had, because I think this was kind of like the class that they brought in last year was, hey, we're bringing in experienced guys who could play right away. And you look at linebacker, right? Martavius French from UTSA. I love his game. I think he's going to be an impact player right away. Like I said, Makari Vickers from Oklahoma. He's probably going to be the 3rd corner. Reginald Hughes, linebacker from Jacksonville State, excuse me. I think he's going to be really good. Like, they brought in talent. They brought in Gabriel Lightfoot from Fresno State. They brought in Tafiq Byard at safety. He's an experienced safety. He was also on the show from USF. So if you look at the net loss compared to the net gain, I think overall they did quite well for themselves. I think the biggest loss was Nikhai Hill-Green, at least through the transfer portal. Other than that, I'm not really worried about any of the guys that they lost in the transfer portal. I think Nikhai Hill-Green and Deion Hayes were the biggest guys. And Deion Hayes, he just didn't live up to expectations. So I think Colorado gets this win total. I think they upgraded at most positions. I think they're more well-rounded as a team. I think their schedule, which we're going to talk about next because it was officially revealed yesterday, I think it works in their favor. And they have a little bit of continuity for the first time in the Coach Prime era, right? The first time, and maybe I don't know. I don't want to say ever, but I know he changed a lot of coordinators at Jackson State. But it's one of the few times that he's gone into another year with both coordinators. It might be the only time, honestly, because obviously 2023 he hired Sean Lewis, Charles Kelly. They both left. Then you bring in Pat Shermer, Robert Livingston. They're both still here. So you have continuity in coaching staff. You have pretty talented position groups around the field, and I think Colorado's schedule is quite favorable. So I would hit the over. I'll do an early prediction of their record right now. This is going to be way too early based on what we know, but obviously this is how confident I am. I think Colorado surpasses. I don't know if it's going to be by as much as a lot of people want it to be, but I do think that they hit the over for what would be the second year in a row, because I believe their over was 6.5 this past year, or five. It was either 5.5 or 6.5, and so really, really interested to see what you guys think. Would you go over? Would you go under? Some other notable props were Kansas 7.5, Bill Belichick in his first year at UNC 7.5, USC 7.5, Michigan 8.5, Texas 9.5, Bama 8.5, Ohio State, Oregon, Notre Dame, and Penn State were all at 10.5. So clearly those teams are all expected to run the table, or at least only drop one game. So you guys let me know, would you take the over on Colorado's 6.5 line? When we come back, I'm going to be giving you guys a way too early schedule breakdown and schedule prediction, record prediction. Let's go through it. Welcome back to the Locked On Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow so you don't miss out on a moment of the coverage. I thank you guys for tuning in, making me your first listen, and we have a lot of fun, and let's continue to do so. On Tuesday, the Big 12 officially announced the time and dates of Colorado's schedule, and I think it's very favorable. The one thing I noticed right away was no back-to-back road games, which is nice. They play more home games than road games as well, which is also nice. And they get a mix of the Big 12 teams. So let's run through it. They open the season at home against Georgia Tech. I think that's a tough game, just because Georgia Tech's a really solid ACC team. I think they could be an ACC contender next year if things go right. So I think for a toss-up here, that's probably, I want to say, a loss for Colorado. I think they start the year 0-1. Just because I feel like Georgia Tech's going to be really good next year. And I think Colorado's going to need to figure some things. Because right now on FanDuel, Georgia Tech is favored by 4.5. Obviously, things could change as it gets closer, but I think I go lost there. Then I think Colorado goes on a little run here. They host Delaware. I think they blow them out. They go to Houston, which Houston's going to be a really much improved team, but I think Colorado beats them. So right now I have them at 2-1. I think they beat Wyoming 3-1. Then they play BYU at home, which BYU beat the brakes off of them in the Alamo Bowl, and they return a lot of their talent as well. I'm going to go lost there. So right now we're sitting at 3-2. They go to TCU. I think they beat the Horned Frogs on the road again. We're 4-2. Play Iowa State. I think that's a loss. Iowa State's returning a lot of talent. Plus, they're probably going to be one of the Big 12 favorites if they aren't. If they aren't already. Obviously, preseason Big 12 favorites doesn't mean everything because Utah was a Big 12 favorite. So at this point, I have Colorado with 4 wins, 3 losses. At Utah, I think that's a tough place to play. I think Utah is going to be a lot better. I think Colorado loses. I think they beat Arizona, so we're 5-4. I think they beat West Virginia 6-4, which that's a road game. And then Arizona State, Kansas State to conclude the year is a really tough end of the year slate. And I think if of those two teams, I think Arizona State's going to beat them, and I think Kansas State's going to beat, or I think Colorado's going to beat Kansas State. So if someone asked me what my record prediction would be on February 5th at 11:09 Pacific time, I would tell you 7-5 for Colorado next year. Now, a lot of things could change. If they add more talent in the transfer portal, I would gladly revise my record prediction, but this is my way too early record prediction. You guys let me know what you think. 7-5. Do you agree with me? Disagree? Comment your projected record below for the Buffs so that way we could discuss. I just think that Arizona State's going to return a lot of talent. I think realistically, Kansas State, Colorado should have beat them this past year. I think it'll be tough, but I think they're going to sneak a win at the end of the season there. But pretty tough schedule overall, right? I think that right now, if we're going based off the rankings of how the season finished. Colorado slated to play 1, 2, 3, 4 ranked teams. And then I think Georgia Tech will probably be a ranked team at some point. I think Utah will probably be a ranked team. So there's a possibility to play 5 or 6 ranked teams for Colorado. So they really, really need to have a big offseason. You guys let me know what you think. This has been another episode of Locked On Buffs. Appreciate you for tuning in every single day, liking, subscribing, following. We're almost to 7,000 subscribers. Let's get there. We're a few hundred away. Make sure it happens so that way we continue to pump out amazing content for you guys. I hope all of you have a great Wednesday, and I will see you guys tomorrow. This has been Locked On Buffs.